Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. So today I am going to be giving you guys my 5 things that I wish someone would have told me before I turned a wheel in ACC. So I'm going to give you 5 tips on things that aren't necessarily obvious within the game, things that have definitely caught me out over time, and just general tips to make you guys faster, whether that be setting faster lap times or just doing better in the races that you enter. But of course, before we do that, a massive thank you to everyone that subscribed over Christmas. And of course, as always, if you enjoy the videos that I make, if you like the content that I'm producing, then don't forget to hit the like button down below, hit the subscribe button, and of course the little bell notification as well, so that you guys know when I release a new video. So tyre pressures are one of the biggest things to set in ACC, and that's because they make such a massive difference to your lap time and how the car feels. Now, I've done a video already setting tyre pressures for GT4 cars, but I wanted to just kind of show you guys again how to set tyre pressures in ACC. And basically what you do is you look at the little graphic which is in the bottom right hand corner of your screen, which shows your tyres, and you'll notice that those tyres have 3 little bars in them. Now, if your tyres are at the optimum pressure, and I'll pop a little graphic up on screen to show this in a sec. If your tyres are up to optimum pressure, then those 3 little bars will all be green and will all be the same height. Now, if you're over pressure slightly, which in my opinion is actually infinitely worse than being under pressure slightly, you will see the middle bar be slightly too tall. It will be slightly higher than the other 2 bars. And then of course, as we go deep into that corner, conversely, if you're under pressure, then you will be, the middle bar will slightly under the other 2. Now, I can't stress this enough, tyre pressures make a massive difference to your lap time. And not only that, they influence massively how the car feels. So if you're in a longer race, then it's no fun driving a car that you don't have any confidence in. So it's definitely worth sorting out. And also, one thing to remember is that if you're running longer races, and I'm talking sort of 3, 4, 5, 6 hours at this point, the weather conditions that you're driving in are going to change. So it may not be the same track temperature as when you started. So in longer races, you really need to keep on top of your tyre pressures and make sure you know what changes you've made. So the way we do this is we set all of our pit strategy roughly the same at the start of the race. We set everything to our starting tyre pressures, and then we keep a note of how much we've changed per stop, and that could be between drivers, because don't forget that if one of your teammates is more aggressive than you, they're going to need slightly lower pressures because they're going to be working the tyres harder. So we've worked out between the drivers before how much extra pressure we need to put in for one person who's slightly kinder on the tyres versus somebody who really throws the car in. And I appreciate I'm just cruising around talking at the moment, but you can see already that I'm still under pressure with my tyres because A, I'm not pushing them very hard, and B, they are actually a little bit under pressure anyway. But yeah, you definitely need to keep on top of your tyre pressures, particularly in a long race, and that will, like I say, make the car nice and predictable, but also make you as fast as you possibly can be. Now, this is something that not everybody knows, and it's not something that everybody tells you. And it's also something that when you run the aggressive setups in ACC, if you run one of the default setups, it's not really set. I can almost guarantee that the tyre pressures will not be right. They may be right for 1 in 10 people, who knows, but I can almost guarantee that they will not be right. So learning how to set your tyre pressures is absolutely crucial. So brake pads. This is something that not a lot of people know about, and especially if you're very, very new to ACC, you won't have found this in the setup menu yet. But of course, there are a variety of different brake pads that you can use on your car, and depending on the situation you're in, you want to pick different ones. Not all brake pads are created equal, and some of them will make you faster, some of them will be good for longer races. So in the actual setup menu, you have 1 to 4, and as they stand, number 1 is a sprint race brake pad. It's for shorter to kind of medium length races, so between 1 and 3 hours. Anything over 3 hours starts to get a little bit sketchy, and we actually found the limit of those brake pads in one of the races that we ran. So brake pad 2. Now brake pad 2 is more of an endurance brake pad. It's for, like I say, endurance races. So anything between 12 and 24 hours you are absolutely fine with, depending upon how hard you are on the brakes. Now, obviously, there's a great deal of difference between 12 and 24 hours. I've seen people make those brake pads last for 24 hours, but you do have to be gentle on the car. You do have to be looking after your brakes. Brake pad 3. Brake pad 3 is a wet pad. It's the most kind of gentle of the pads. You won't get as much disc wear, and it's actually very easy to modulate this brake pad. However, it does stop you in a longer distance. You're not going to be braking as aggressively as on brake pad 4, which is absolutely an exhibition sprint race brake pad, good for a maximum of an hour. This is obviously the most aggressive brake pad, and it's the one you want to be using for qualifying. It doesn't necessarily last that long, but it does stop you very, very quickly. So for qualifying, as an example, where you don't need that kind of length of kind of service in the brake pads, you don't need the brake pads to last for that long. You only really need them to last for 3 laps. They're excellent, and I don't necessarily, on these pads, I don't necessarily brake any later than I would do normally. It just helps me control the car a little bit more. It just means you're not as on the edge as you would be, for example, on brake pad 1 or brake pad 2. You're not on the edge for getting stopped and getting into the corners, which then means that the car's a bit more stable and will just help with a nice smooth qualifying lap. So there we go, there's brake pads 1 to 4, and actually I'm going to stop the car and I will just show you very quickly. So if we go to our garage and we head into our setup menu, we go into fuel and strategy, and you can see in the top box there we've got our brake pads, and we can change them between 1 and 4. So if you haven't seen those before, if you haven't played with those before, I urge you to go out and mess around with those brake pads and use them for the correct thing, and it will make you faster. So my next thing that I wish someone had told me before I started racing ACC is about wheel lock. Now, some of you will know about this already, some of you won't, and to be honest, it's one of those things where you can drive around it and it's absolutely fine, but it does help to make you more consistent if you run the correct wheel lock for the car you're driving. Now, different cars have different wheel locks, and I will pop a link in the description below to the correct wheel locks for all of the cars. Now, if we go into our controls menu, and in the advanced section we have our steer lock, and that basically tells the wheel how to make the input that you're giving the wheel one-to-one with the car that you're driving, and that tells you how much lock you're actually able to wind into the car. So the way to check this is to go into either the helmet cam or the cockpit cam. So obviously I run the cockpit cam normally without the wheel on, just because I find the wheel a little bit distracting. But what you can do is then just turn the wheel 90 degrees to the left, and you can see as I turn the wheel, the hands follow what I'm doing. So I do 90 degrees the other way, and you can see that's nice and lovely right at the top there. So now I know that my steering lock is set in the right position. So what I'm actually inputting into the steering wheel is what's going to the wheels. Now, this is crucial for some cars, and some cars are a bit more resilient to this. The one that really struggles if you have the wrong steering lock is the Porsche. The Porsche has a 900 degree steering lock, which means you can make really fine adjustments on the steering wheel. And the problem is that if you have your steering lock set too low, that translates to massive turning movements in the game, which actually then, with a car that has a rear engine and kind of isn't that responsive to steering, kind of jerky steering, it really doesn't like being thrown into corners. It makes the car very unstable and means that the car is consequently a lot harder to drive. Like I said, you can drive around this. For most cars, you can get away with running the wrong steering lock, but to be honest, for me, if I want to steer the car in a certain direction, I want to know that the amount of steering I'm putting in on my wheel in front of me is the same as what's being transferred to the car. So again, this might seem a relatively obvious one, but you would be amazed by the amount of people that get caught out by this and don't even realise. The tyres in ACC have a fairly long life. They'll run about 3 hours, depending on how tough you are on them, before they start to really give up. But we've actually done a race before and managed, I think it was a GT4 race, and managed to run the same set of tyres accidentally for 4 hours before one of them actually blew out and forced us to change. Oh, as we're going straight on over here. And basically it was only after a couple of attempted pit stops where we had three wheels on our wagon and didn't manage to successfully change that we figured out what was going on. And nobody had actually told us that you need to make sure that you have a new tyre set selected when you go into the pits. Now, if you set your pit strategy up correctly, this does it automatically, but it doesn't necessarily do it automatically in all cases. So it's definitely something worth checking, especially if you're thinking of doing longer races. So if we go into our pit menu, you can see we have our change tyres section. So at the moment we're not selected, so if we go down and hit change tyres, so we are currently on tyre set 2, that's what we're running right now. And if you have a look, we have tyre set 3 selected with our compound and our pressures and stuff like that we talked about earlier. So what had actually happened is that we were running the same tyre set for all of our pit strategies. So we'd literally just copied and pasted our pit strategies across and hadn't noticed that we weren't changing tyres. So it was only when we had that puncture that we realised that, after I'd come in for my first stop to try and change this puncture, that I went back out and still had the puncture. And I came in and tried it again, and I still had a puncture. And it was at that point that we realised that we needed to change tyre set. So if you go into the tyre set there, we're on tyre set 1. We were set for tyre set 3. I'm not entirely sure why ACC is doing that, but basically the little marker next to the tyre set shows you the condition of the tyres. So white means completely new and no scrubbing on it whatsoever. And if, for example, we were to choose an old set of tyres, then it would have a black circular dot next to it, which means that they're old, they're scrubbed, and they're probably not a good idea to stick on the car. So there we go, that's just something that we've noticed, and a bit of a gotcha on ACC. So my final point is about safety rating, and particularly I see posts every so often asking how to improve your safety rating, or particularly how to start again if you ruin your safety rating. I've seen so many posts of, oh, how do I reset my safety ratings and stuff like that. And to be honest, that's the point of them being there, is to give a reflection of you as a racer. And yeah, it's not always 100% fair. For example, with ACC, as with iRacing and a few other platforms, penalises you if you have any contact at all, and that means if people hit you from behind as well. And that's not fair. That's ultimately a bit crap, because there's nothing you can do in that situation. However, no one has come up with an algorithm to assign blame for an accident yet, so the easiest way to do that is to just assign blame to all parties. However, that kind of brings me on to my point, which is when you're building your safety rating, avoid contact at all costs. If you need to put the car in the wall to maintain your safety rating and not hit someone, do it. There'll always be another race. So within your safety rating, you have your trust rating, which is how much you can run close to people and not hit them, or how much you can run close to people. I think it's within like 0.5 or 0.4 of a second you start building trust. So if you can run consistently behind someone or just in front of someone without there being an accident, then you'll start building your trust rating. Now, the other section in the SA rating is BWP, and basically what that is how many times you've had contact with another car. I can't remember exactly what BWP stands for, but like I say, essentially it means how much have you hit other cars. Now, in my experience, and I've been through building safety rating on Xbox and then on PC as well, it's much, much, much easier to build a nice, healthy safety rating. And you can see mine is 82 at the moment. I've been doing a lot of public lobbies, so it has gone down a bit from where it was. I think I got to 85, 87 at one point. And it's much, much easier to build that nice, healthy safety rating with a low BWP score. If you spend the first couple of weeks learning what you're doing and running into every single car on track, then you'll have a nice, high BWP score, and consequently you will find it much harder to increase your safety rating. You'll find that your safety rating goes up much slower. Now, obviously, there is a way out of that. You can work your way out of that and just keep building trust and keep building trust and keep building trust, and you will eventually build a nice, healthy safety rating. And then it's just a case of maintaining it, making sure that you're not taking silly risks. And that's kind of what the safety rating system is designed for. It's designed to kind of punish those that consistently either don't play by the rules, ruin races for other people, and this is something that you see in all sims, or just make silly mistakes and put the car where it necessarily shouldn't be. So, for example, just sticking your nose up the inside of someone when in reality you're never going to get the move done is something that you will lose safety rating for if you eventually make contact with them. And I think ACC is mildly clever in that it does punish people differently in an accident. So, for example, if you just kind of error 404, brake not found, into the back of someone, you will get more of a hit than the person you've run into, but the person you've run into will also get a penalty as well, which, like I said, is fundamentally a little bit unfair, but there is no kind of algorithm yet of how to assign blame in an accident. So that, again, is something that I really wish, when I was building my safety rating on Xbox, someone had told me before I went out and started building it, because I would have been much, much more careful with the kind of opportunities that I took in trying to get past people. And this is something I've kind of proved when I've been onto PC and kind of had to basically go through building a safety rating again, is that I built it much quicker the second time around, because I'd had that experience and I knew that if it was a choice of either the wall or the back of somebody's car, I was going to take the wall every single time. So there we go, that's a little chat about safety rating, and that's a little chat about the 5 things that I wish someone had told me before I started driving in ACC. So hopefully that's helped you guys, hopefully you've learned something today, and it'll make you faster in ACC and you'll enjoy the game a little bit more. So thank you very much. Don't forget to do all that fun YouTube stuff. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Leave me a comment in the comments below if you think of something else. If you think of something that you think I should mention, and maybe I'll do another video of 5 more things that I wish people had told me. But thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.